Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I really appreciate it. It's great to meet you.
Likewise.
So let's begin our journey with this. 6 years ago, this pandemic changed everything. How did you get through that era and how has it changed the way that you approach life today?
I think one of the things that COVID really taught me is that things can change on the drop of a hat. And at that point, right before the world kind of shut down, I was on a trajectory with my business where we're in Thailand, we opened a retreat, and we had just started our retreat business for a couple of years, but we hit a precipice where we literally sold out of a retreat in one weekend. And we're like, oh, we made it. Like, we have officially hit success in our business. This is so exciting. And then bump, bump, bump. We all know what happened. And so I think that it's this non-attachment to success, non-attachment to how you think something should be. Because while that really pulled out the proverbial rug from under my feet, it taught me so much as an entrepreneur, as a person, as somebody who loves their family. Like that was just such an incubator of growth, even though it was probably one of the most difficult times that we collectively have had as a society in my lifetime.
Yeah.
I think it also really helped me become the person that I am today.
So let's get into the marrow of what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of kids. They're 12 or 13. It's career day, and the kid in the back of the room wants to know what you do for a living. How do you synthesize what you do to make sense to that brain?
Oh, I love that. Okay. What I would probably say, zooming out, is that I help people travel the world, have iconic experiences, and have transformation. Because I think what we often need is in a day to day, when we are on our computers, when we are so tuned in and locked into our life, it becomes really difficult to change our patterns of thinking, who we are, our identity. But oftentimes we have that little voice in the back knowing that we're not quite aligned with what we wanted to be, who we want to be. And I think getting to go on retreats really can be that catalyst of change of, oh, wait, I have this big dream inside of me. I have these passion projects. I'm not quite living who I wanted to be when I was a little kid and said, I want to be an astronaut or I want to be a comedian. We all had these big ideas. And somewhere in the midst of life, we oftentimes lose that line sight. So I think at the end of the day, that's what I create spaciousness for. And I help other people who have communities and audiences be able to curate with that for their audiences, with whatever the magic is, and creating that container for that magic to take place.
So you're dealing with, you got scaffolding around big dreams. So I'm curious, going back in your life, what was that big dream of yours? What was the career, the life you wanted at 12 or 13, 14?
I've had many evolutions in my life. So
Yeah.
at one point, I was like, I wanted to be a dancer and I just wanted to dance and I wanted to be an actress. And I think if I zoomed out now, I have elements of that. I love talking on stage. I love holding space. I do guided meditations and teach yoga and help coaches. So I get to have a voice and get to be seen, although it's evolved differently from perhaps what I would have imagined when I was a wee little tot wanting to tap dance and have everyone watch me.
So take me back to where you were born and raised. Are you from Madison?
So I'm actually from Ashland, Oregon.
Okay.
So I was living nomadically for 10 years. And I had met someone in ships passing in a night, and he is now my husband. And I was just starting, I was on my way to live in India and do my yoga teacher training and start this international business. And so, we just for years would say, like, Merry Christmas, Happy Birthday. We stayed in touch online. And so eventually he said, I never got to take you out on that dinner. I'm going to come anywhere you are in the world. So he hopped on a plane and came all the way to Bali, Indonesia. We
Wow.
had a whirlwind romance. And then he said, well, have you ever been to Madison, Wisconsin? So I came here and I've never been to this part of the world before. And I've been here for 3 winters. And I do count them by winters, Joe, because they are iconic.
As you should. So I want to go back to your childhood in Oregon. What were those foundational seeds that were planted for you to have this nomadic existence, this healthy, somatic, spiritual backbone, entrepreneurial? There's a lot of right and left brain, a lot of motivation. What were these seeds instilled in you early on that's evolved and harvested into you?
I believe that I was so incredibly blessed. They always say it takes a village, and I certainly had that surrounding me. So, my parents divorced when I was quite young. And while that was hard in many ways, it also gave me the gift of having four parents. And so, I had engineers in my parenting. My mom was an entrepreneur. She always had her own businesses. She was a yoga teacher. She had wellness spaces. And instead of having the proverbial one American family a year, I would have two. So I would, travel with my dad and my stepmom and my mom and my stepdad. And so from a very young age, I lived in Mexico when I was in third grade. My mom at that point hadn't remarried, and my brother got very, very sick. And so she didn't have a lot of money, single mom. She was working her tail off. She sold everything we owned. She bought a van and a trailer. And now that I'm older, I'm like, I can't believe she did this. She loaded us all up. We got one of those 1990s computers in the trailer so we could go to school. And she drove from Oregon all the way down to Cabo San Lucas by herself with her kids. And I went to third grade in Mexico. So from a very young age, I think I just had a natural inclination to experience the world through travel. So I did an exchange program when I was in high school to Brazil. I did my senior capstone in university in Argentina. I think I just really started to see borders dissolve and be a citizen of the world from a very young age. And I'm very, very grateful for my family for that.
So, of all of these places that you've traveled to, and your all of these experiences in varying phases of your life, what was one of the most magically unexpected places you visited that blew you away and you didn't realize it until you got there?
So when I was a little kid, my dad had me registered for National Geographic magazines. Y'all remember that many moons
Uh-huh.
ago?
Uh-huh. Yep.
And I remember one of them being about stargazing in Namibia. And at the time, when I was a little kid, I would cut out whatever I liked the best and I would put it on my walls. And I think that might have been my first interaction with not knowing about manifestation, but manifesting it because I
Wow.
ended up traveling to Namibia when I was, in adulthood and looking up at the stars and saying, "Oh my gosh, it was such a healing moment for my inner child or my younger self to say, this was something that you loved, that you wanted to see, and you didn't know how it was going to happen. And all of a sudden, magically, you've put yourself in alignment to create a lifestyle that would empower you to be looking up in the stars. And Namibia is just such a exotic, beautiful place. I've been to 61 countries. So at a certain point, not to say that it's not always exciting and new, but to go somewhere that feels truly exotic
Yeah.
and different and challenging is always really, really exciting for me. So in Namibia, you can't drive at night because there's not enough light. So it just has that nuanced of feeling like you are a true adventurer, and the people and culture are just phenomenal.
Wow. Like another planet. That's wild.
It's amazing.
So let me ask you this. Who has been that inspirational force, that heroic force in your life that's allowed you to go on these adventures, to find your professional footing, to do all of these things in your life? Who has that been?
I think it's a bit of my mom and my father. So my mom, she lives currently in Albania, in Europe, and she's in her 70s. She lives by herself. She doesn't speak the language, and that's been my mom. Like she will go and move to Ecuador by herself and live in a tiny little village. Like she has just always been so brave. And I think that is so inspiring to me. And then my father, he was in the military, then he went into the government. He was somebody that was so by the book. And the proverbial kind of American dream, we didn't have a lot growing up. And certainly my grandmother, I'm Chinese American, she would crack crab in Fisherman's Wharf. So to see what wealth and education and life experiences they have amassed has been so inspiring. And even though my dad was very kind of measured in how he approached things, I came to him and I said, "Hey, I'm going on this gap year," which at the time is like, okay, you graduated with honors, you've got this great job in renewable energy, you're climbing the corporate ladder, and now you want to quit? Okay. And for him to have that be so the antithesis of his path, but still support me. And then I met my, at one point, business partner for 2 weeks at a beach in Bali and say, "Hey, I'm going to start this business. What do you think?" And my dad said, you'll always regret not taking the chance.
Yeah.
You know, school will always be there. I was meant to go back to grad school. He said you could always go back, but why don't you take this chance? And so I think for me, I'm so blessed that I had a safety net of people who would support me. And I would always go worst case scenario, like what's the worst thing would happen? And I always say, I ended up on my parents' couch. But you know what? It's a pretty comfy couch. I can handle it. And I think that let me jump a lot higher.
Yeah. So, of everybody that's alive on the planet right now, if you could meet one fascinating individual, someone that might help you on your journey, ask some questions, be around them, who would you love to meet, have a lunch with, and talk to?
Ooh, great question. Hmm. I think that perhaps the person that I would like to meet the most is Obama.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons for me personally, not only is he a phenomenal speaker, you know, when I speak, I often try to remind myself the power of the pause, which I think he is the epitome of.
Yeah.
He's got you hanging on every word. But I think in a world where we have so much controversy and there's so many quote unquote trolls and people trying to drag you down, you know, if you're trying to be that tall poppy and being a representation of a voice, you know, people on social media can be mean and catty. And I think that I've always been inspired that the Obamas have always taken the high road. You know, it's
Hmm.
always been this, we're going to go high even if they go low. And to watch him be this beacon of hope of how can we kind of take this middle road? How can I have a lot of controversy around me and still show up in my authentic self and be somebody who, at the time, I mean, he was just such a representation of something we've never had in our political offices and as a hopeful space to be moving into where we had more inclusion. I think it was a beautiful point in my upbringing to get to see that, and I would love just to get to meet him, chat with him, and thank him for being a beacon of hope.
I think we're all at that point more than ever right now. And I think about, I was listening to a speech at Jesse Jackson's eulogy, and he was saying what's going on right now, the decorum that is lackluster with this administration and these people running this country is abhorrent, and it's not okay, and it's not normal. And I just get this sense without him saying it that everybody along his lines, whether it's him or the Clintons because they got deposed for no reason, for all of their words and actions and the way they're putting things out are not going to change because there's a bully in the classroom. They're going to stick to what they've always stuck to. And I think they're telling the youth, do not go and to another level because it's the thing to do. And I think that's where we're at. And that's the thing I've always admired reading Michelle Obama's book. She just talked about what he was like early on, and it's like a lot of what he is now. Of course, we evolve and change over time, but a lot of that young law student was a voracious reader. He was very good at oratory. He was very good at history. And I think that's the thing that's telltale about both of them. They've been very good stewards of history, and they've never forgotten where they came from. And if you take those together and mince it with curiosity, you're going to have somebody that's dynamic, and that's what they are. So,
Absolutely.
so let me ask you this. What's one of the biggest risks that you've taken as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, something that made you grow that maybe didn't look good on paper? What was that moment?
Oh, so during COVID, obviously the whole world shut down. And so our retreats literally went frozen overnight. And we were in South Africa hosting when they shut down borders. And we had a group there, and we were meant to have another group coming in a few days. So we had to like get everybody home. You know, at the last minute, I told my parents, I'm just going to stay in South Africa. And my dad, being of a military background, was like, bug out now. Like, you got to come home. So we came home, and because we were in the travel business, our accounts were frozen, so we couldn't access our capital. We had, you know, we really tried to lead with integrity in our business. So if people, you know, we tried to do refunds when we could, we tried to roll future retreats, but s- needless to say, it was very financially a pressure system, a pressure cooker for us. So what do we do? We say, okay, well, we've got this skill set. What do we do? Let's build an app. Everybody's at home. They need wellness, so we could teach them mindset, yoga, fitness. We're going to build an app. So we took out $100,000 loan during the pandemic. And I think a lot of people were baking bread and hanging out. And at so many points, I'm like, why didn't I do that? Would have been a better choice. But it was like, no, let's build. So we hired a dietitian nutritionist to build out all these recipes. We hired, an app developer. We hired a marketing agency that had the big title and they were going to be the project manager. So we just started dumping cash into this and running. I think at that point it's probably a bit of your nervous system being on hyperdrive. So it's just like, if I could work faster, I can work my way out of this. Long story short, we ended up finding out that the app developer was a fake. And he was meant to have all this experience developing these famous apps. Well, it ends up that it ended up being somebody completely different. And they were having us put all this money in different accounts. And so we had to pull the plug because it kept being like, oh, we just need another $40,000. Oh, we just need this. We just need this. And it got blown out of proportion. And all of a sudden, we had these assets, but no way to monetize it. So we pivoted, and our whole mantra of that era was pivot, pivot, ribbit. So we took all the assets and turned it into a high ticket coaching product. We ended up transforming 2,000 clients' lives, ended up being really powerful because what people were missing at that point was community. And an app doesn't really create that much community, but high ticket, high touch point does. So we're able to turn it around. But at a certain point, Joe, it was like, oh my gosh, we jumped into the deep end. We had no tech skills. We didn't know how. Hired the wrong project manager, and it was so stressful.
Yeah, that there's no worse feeling than feeling like you're on the back end of something that just didn't get to pan out. That's terrifying. So let me ask you this. What is the motivation for you every day to wake up to do this work that you do? You're changing lives. You have to nurture your soul and your family. This thirst for adventure, all of these things that are you to do it at a high level. When that alarm clock either does or doesn't go off in the morning, what gets your feet on the ground to do this at a high level?
I think when you find something that really lights you up, and I'm talking about that like internal desire. And I think, I want to have X amount in my paycheck, or my bank account. I want to do these things. That's not usually the desire. That's not the thing that lights you up. What really lights me up is when I get to talk to somebody and they have that aha moment. When I get to go to Thailand, Bali, Indonesia, and I get to see someone do something that I've done and I love, and they get to do it for the first time. I've had women swim in the ocean for the very first time. I've had clients that get on a plane for the very first time. A part of our business is every retreat we hosted, we had a nonprofit arm. So we would give to local initiatives. So we helped build a well in Indonesia. We helped after school kid programs in South Africa. So to see that when somebody can travel halfway across the world and get to meet a kid in South Africa, and that kid says, hey, I want to be a doctor. And my client says, oh, I'm a doctor. And they can talk and connect, and it's inspiring. I think it's that part that lights me up because in a world of just plugging in and doing the same thing over and over and over, it's those true connection points, those iconic lifetime moments. And my cup gets to be so filled with once in a lifetime moments. And I feel so honored and blessed. And it geeks me out. I love building retreats. I love putting it all together because it's so beautiful what can happen.
So another thing that can be a part of our existence that can change things inextricably is just a random act of kindness, someone being nice to us. What's one of the nicest things that anybody's ever done for you?
I always say that the energy that we give out is the energy that we attract. And so I'd like to think that it's one of the reasons that so many nice, wonderful things have happened in my life that I feel so blessed. I've had somebody say, hey, why don't you come to Australia when I was in Bali and you can stay at my house for free? Nobody's there and you can enjoy it. I've had people, hey, I'm going to be going on this trip. I've got an extra ticket. Do you want to come? And I think that those random acts of kindness, where it's something that somebody is willing to give, they go out of your way, has just been so helpful for me because it reminds me to do it myself. And I think that becomes a system of reciprocity of where can I give back? When can I give it? How can I just do something even small? Like if you don't have a lot of, resources, a smile in today's society. I'm so shocked by how many people like go through the grocery line and they're on their phone and they don't even look at the person checking them, doing the clicker at the checkout. It's like just smile and ask, how's your day? It's some of those little elements that I think not only help that person, but they help you feel that greater sense of connection. And I think when you feel like there's an endless world of possibilities in your world and you never know what's the next greatest thing that's going to happen, it just helps you move through the world with more excitement and wonder.
Absolutely. There was a are you familiar with the musician Moby?
Hmm.
Okay, there was a video he put out about 5 years ago, and it was all these like cartoon cats, almost looking a little bit like Felix the Cats, and they were all on their phone and they were all looking down, every single one of them. And they were going through the city and they were doing all this stuff, and he was just exemplifying that we've gotten to that point. It was so creepy,
Yeah.
just like every single person in this video. So it's weird how that happens, and we've gotten to that distraction point. I was even thinking yesterday. I was on a group text and I'm driving and I love audiobooks and I'm listening to it. And these texts keep coming in. And I'm like, just that action of being totally interceded by a book that I'm listening to is like, we've just gotten to that point where everything's a distraction, a ding, you know, a
Yes.
dopamine hit. So
Yes.
it's wild. So let me ask you this. If you were to run into a 13-year-old version of you, or even I would say 18-year-old version of you, in a dream tonight, and you walked in the room, and at your age now, your state where you're at, you hit play on a film projector, and a 60-second highlight reel of the life you've lived showed up there, would that young version of you believe that your life turned out this way?
You know, when I was most of my life, I battled with terrible acne. And I'm talking like medical level, can't figure it out what's going on. And I think that really shot a lot of my confidence. And, because that's how you present to the world. It's the first thing people see. And it's almost a signal of your health and your confidence that you wear on the outside. And so for so much of my life, I think I felt like a wallflower and I felt like I had these mechanisms to try to blend in. And I think that now that I feel really good in my body and I've gone on the journey, and it wasn't always this way, but to, do the mindset work, to do the healing, to do the movement on a daily basis, to create this really empowered self because I focus so much on how I can fill my cup and replenish as much as I give. I think my probably 13 to 18-year-old self would be shocked because I'm no longer utilizing, substances to numb out. I'm not distracting myself. I actually have a rule because of that phone thing where it's like 5:30, my phone goes in a box and I'm only allowed to watch TV on the weekends just because I really am trying to curate passion.
Yeah.
I want to play my ukulele. I want to read books. I want to have this really big life and constantly be in this state of always evolving, always progressing, always challenging my thoughts. And so I think I would be very honored and happy with how things have turned out.
So let's, of everything that you've done, everything you've overcome, everything you've accomplished and evolved to, what are you ultimately the happiest about, the proudest of?
I think I'm the happiest about how I feel in my body. Because I've had highs and lows in business, because I've had different relationships in my life, because, there's so many things that can be taken away in a moment or changed than how you had that definition of success. But I think being happy and having, at a certain point, because I grew up in the dance community, I had an unhealthy relationship with food. Dealing with my skin stuff, I wasn't, proud and confident of who I looked like when I looked in the mirror. So to be in a place where I can love myself into wellness and not deprive, punish, that allows me to have self-love that I can then turn out to everyone else and everything else that I do. And being that I can stand like strong and powerful in who I am helps me uplift my husband, my family, my career, everything else because I've got this huge anchoring core that took a very long time to generate and curate, but to come into this place where I'm happy with who I am.
So if you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see one event in human history, where are you going to go? What do you want to see?
Ooh.
Yeah,
Hmm.
there's so much.
So I know I want to see it all. I want to go
Yeah.
on Bill and Ted's Ultimate Adventure to
Uh-huh.
see it all.
Yes.
I think for me, one of the eras that I love the most because my parents both came from that. So my folks are in their 70s, and they both speak about the 1970s with such joy and reverence and just this time of new thought and music and counterculture. You know, my parents were both the proverbial hippies. I think it would be so cool to get to, and I would hope that I'd be this age if I went back into the time machine, get to chill with my parents on that level and just get to see them in their prime. You know, my dad used to have the like two-piece suits with the bell bottoms and the fedora hats, and my mom had, you know, the big curly hair with flowers in her hair. I love my parents so, so very much, and I think it would be so fun to get to go to see Janis Joplin and do all these things
Yeah.
that they talk about with so much joy when they tell me the stories of their past.
What do you like the best about being in Madison, Wisconsin?
Whew. You know, I've lived, got to dig a little deeper for this
Uh-huh.
one.
Yes.
I have lived nomadically for the past 10 years. So this is, I would just travel with the business. So I'd host a retreat in Bali, then pop over to Thailand. So I was always on the go. It was so much transition that I would wake up some mornings and not know where I was. And I'd be like, okay, I hear like chickens going off, like I'm in Mexico. So I think that being here, one of the things that I craved the most was community. And I haven't really built a strong community around me because that lack of being more sedentary. And so I've been here for 3 years now. I have an amazing gym that I go to. A couple of us just got back from Vegas. We did a high rocks competition together. You know, we planned fun events. We had a Lunar New Year party here. And it's the small stuff, right? Like these aren't huge trips, these aren't big parties, but to be able to have people there in your corner and get to touch them, not just on a screen, but give them a hug, go see how they're doing, give them flowers if they're going through something. That is really important to the human spirit. And it's definitely something that I have been missing. And I feel very honored and blessed that I've been able to curate a bit of a tribe here. And we survived the winter together.
I love it. So everyone, Whitney, has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone in your world, everyone that knows you in different capacities, that you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm somebody who wants to lead with integrity and do my best every day. I'm pretty hard on myself, and I know it. But I think that one of my superpowers is that I really do care. And at the end of the day, when I put my head down on the pillow with, you know, my clients, my family, my loved ones, my friends, I really do try to make sure that everybody feels like a person and not 5,244 on, you know, my list of things that I need to do. And so I think that I'm somebody who recognizes that my word is bond and that's all I've got in this world. So I really need to make sure that I show up authentically, and really put my best foot forward every day.
I love it. So if anybody wants more, they want to dig in, they got questions, they want to hire you, where's the best place to go?
Retreatstrategyco.com. I'm here for you. I'd love to jump on a call if you're interested in hosting retreats, learning about how that can really integrate into your world. I'm your gal.
Okay, excellent. I will put all these links in the show notes. What a wonderfully illuminating conversation. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything. This has been great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You bet.